September 7th. A father and his son are climbing a slope in the Pisgah National Forest. They're looking for game, looking for anything that moves. What they find doesn't move. The body of a woman, wrapped in a blue blanket, pushed into a grave so shallow it's barely a grave at all. And she was wearing someone else's clothes. A warning to our viewers. What you are about to watch is a true story. The following program contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The woman in that shallow grave was Judy Smith, a home care nurse who didn't hike, who actively hated camping, and who had vanished from a historic city street 5 months earlier, wearing white sneakers and a purple jogging suit. To understand the sheer impossibility of how she ended up on that mountain, you have to understand the woman she was. Judith Lois Eldridge was born on December 15, 1946, in Hyannis, Massachusetts. To those who knew her, she was simply Judy, a warm, deeply dependable woman who spent her life looking after people. By April of 1997, she was 50 years old, living in Newton, one of those wealthy, tree-lined Boston suburbs where nothing bad is supposed to happen to anybody. Her life hadn't been simple to get there. Her first husband fled to Sweden to dodge the Vietnam draft. Her second marriage gave her 2 children, a son, Craig, and a daughter, Amy. That marriage ended too. Then, in 1987, she met Judy Smith, a lawyer. She was caring for his dying father, and somewhere along the line, fell in love with his son. They dated for 10 years. Lived together for 3, and in September of 1996, they finally got married. They'd been husband and wife for just 5 months when they packed for Philadelphia. Judy loved the city. She loved international travel, fine dining, and shopping. But her children were very clear about one thing. Judy hated the outdoors. She despised camping. She hated bugs. She hated mud. And she actively avoided hiking. If she was going to travel, it was to a museum or a nice restaurant, not a forest. Keep that detail in your mind, because it is a strange one in this case. By April 1997, Judy and Jeffrey had been married for just 8 months. They were still in the honeymoon phase of their lives together. Jeffrey was scheduled to moderate a panel at the Northeast Pharmaceutical Conference in Philadelphia, held at the DoubleTree Hotel in Center City. The couple decided to turn the business trip into their first real vacation, as newlyweds, planning to visit old friends in New Jersey right after the conference ended. On the morning of April 9, 1997, they loaded their suitcases into a public bus and headed for the airport. Their flight was scheduled for 1:30 p.m., but at the check-in counter, Judy reached into her bag and froze. Her driver's license was gone. She had left it on the counter at home. In 1997, the Federal Aviation Administration had implemented strict security rules. Without a photo ID, you could not board the aircraft. She knew Jeffrey had to moderate his afternoon session. She didn't want him to be late, so she told him to fly ahead. She would take the bus back to Newton, retrieve her license, and catch a later flight. Jeffrey hesitated, but Judy insisted. Eventually, he boarded the plane alone. Judy took a round-trip bus ride back to their home, found her ID, and boarded the next flight to Philadelphia. When she landed at night, she was feeling guilty for the delay. Before leaving the airport terminal, she bought a beautiful bouquet of flowers as a simple gesture to her husband. She took a cab straight to Center City, arrived at the lobby of the DoubleTree Hotel. A front desk clerk and a conference attendee both noticed her, a smiling woman holding flowers and walking toward the elevator. She surprised Jeffrey in their room. They ate pizza, laughed about the airport confusion, and went to sleep. Unfortunately, that was the last normal night of Judy Smith's life. April 10, 1997. The weather in Philadelphia was freezing. Jeffrey woke up early, slipped downstairs to the hotel restaurant for a quick breakfast, and returned to the room. Judy was just getting into the shower. They talked through the shower curtain. Jeffrey told her the breakfast downstairs was exceptional, and she should try it. Judy laughed, saying maybe she should walk downstairs naked and dripping wet to get it. They shared a kiss goodbye through the lobby elevators, and Jeffrey headed to his morning sessions. That was the last time he ever saw his wife alive. Here's what we know about that day. Judy's plan for the day was simple. She was a first-time visitor to Philadelphia. She wanted to see the historic sights, Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell. She told Jeffrey she was going to buy a ticket for the Philly Flash, a bright purple tourist loop bus that moved in a circle through the historic district. They agreed to meet back at their hotel room between 5 and 6 that evening for a cocktail party at the conference. Judy left the hotel room around 9:30 a.m. She was dressed for a cool, casual city walk. She wore a light purple jogging suit, white sneakers, a light blue windbreaker, and she carried her signature bright red leather backpack. Inside that backpack was her wallet, about $200 in cash, her hotel key, and her reading glasses. She left her credit cards and her official ID in the hotel room. She was traveling light, expecting to return in just a few hours. She approached the hotel concierge, asking for directions to the nearest Flash bus stop. From that moment, the timeline of Judy's day in Philadelphia becomes a ghost trail, reconstructed only by fleeting, unconfirmed sightings. A Flash bus driver later told investigators he remembered picking up a woman matching Judy's description, carrying a distinctive red leather backpack at the stop closest to the DoubleTree Hotel. Around 1 p.m., a security guard saw a woman matching Judy's description enter and immediately exit the Greyhound bus terminal at 11th and Filbert Streets, near Chinatown. Her family believed she likely stopped there just to use the public restroom. Later in the afternoon, another tourist bus driver reported picking her up near Penn's Landing, at Front and South Streets, and dropping her off near the hotel around noon. And then, at 3:15 p.m., a pedestrian near Broad and Locust Streets noticed a woman matching Judy's description. She was pacing, looking intensely disoriented, acting as if she didn't know where she was. And then, nothing. The trail went cold. At 5:30 p.m., Jeffrey Smith returned to their room at the hotel. The room was empty. The bed was made. Judy's suitcase was in the corner, her unworn clothes still neatly packed. Jeffrey waited. 5 minutes became 20. 20 became 40. His concern turned to panic. He went down to the lobby, checking the cocktail room as the guests began to arrive. He didn't see her. He walked up to the concierge, his voice tight. "My wife. She hasn't come back. She was just sightseeing. Can we call the local hospitals?" The concierge began dialing. Nothing. No accidents reported. Jeffrey walked out, hailed a yellow taxi, slid into the back seat, and handed the driver a $20 bill. "Just drive," Jeffrey said. "Drive the tourist loop. Slowly, along the bus route. I'm looking for my wife." They drove for hours. The lights of Philadelphia blurred past the window. Jeffrey stared into the dark streets, looking for a purple jogging suit, a red leather backpack. Nothing. At midnight, Jeffrey walked into the local police precinct to file a missing person report. The officer behind the desk looked at him and told him she hadn't been gone long enough. "Most adults come back, sir," the officer said. "You have to wait 24 hours. It wasn't until the morning of April 11th, after Jeffrey contacted Mayor Ed Rendell and Representative John Purcell, both of whom were attending the pharmaceutical conference, that the police department officially opened the missing person file. By then, Judy Smith had been gone for over a full day, and she was never seen, with any certainty, in the city of Philadelphia again. 2 detectives were assigned. They walked the hotel. They interviewed the staff. But there was no crime scene, no blood, no signs of struggle. Judy had simply walked out of a luxury hotel room into the middle of Center City and vanished. For the next few weeks, Jeffrey Smith lived inside a nightmare. The Philadelphia police treated him like they treat every husband of a missing woman. The husband is a primary suspect. The police treated Jeffrey with intense suspicion. They wondered if the forgotten ID at the airport was a staged performance, a calculated way to separate their arrivals. They pointed out that Jeffrey had initially refused to take a standard lie detector test. Jeffrey insisted he would only take the test if it was administered by the FBI, because he didn't trust the local detectives who were already trying to frame him. But his alibi was strong. Dozens of conference attendees, hotel logs, and pharmaceutical board members documented his presence at the DoubleTree during the exact hours Judy vanished. He couldn't have done anything to her in Philadelphia. But the police were still skeptical. Jeffrey didn't care. He mailed and faxed over 9,000 flyers to police departments, hospitals, and shelters up and down the eastern seaboard. He hired 3 separate private investigators. He spent his life savings trying to find her. Judy's children, Craig and Amy, stood by him. They told the media their mother and Jeffrey were deeply in love. There was no domestic trouble, and no reason for her to run. Then, the reports started coming back from North Carolina. 600 miles south of Philadelphia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Buncombe County, a retail clerk named Joanne Stucker was sorting mail when she saw one of Jeffrey's missing person flyers. She knew that face. She called the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. "I saw her," Stucker told the detective. "It was mid-April. She was in my store here in Asheville." Stucker described the woman as pleasant, highly alert, and entirely coherent. She told Stucker that her husband was a Boston attorney, attending a convention in Pennsylvania, and that she just decided to come down here. That was the first time investigators realized Judy might have left Philadelphia alive. But something wasn't right. The witness knew details that had never been released to the press, that Jeffrey was a Boston attorney and that he was at a convention in Pennsylvania. Around the same time, a campground owner near the Stony Fork area reported a woman matching Judy's description, driving a gray sedan packed with boxes and bags. She asked if she could pay a fee to park and sleep inside her car overnight. The owner told her it was against policy, and she quietly drove away. A deli owner in Candler, just miles from where the body would be found, reported the same woman in the gray sedan. She had purchased $30 worth of sandwiches, an uncommonly large order for one person, and a small toy plastic pickup truck. But Judy Smith didn't own a gray sedan. She didn't rent a gray sedan. None of her credit cards or bank accounts had been accessed to buy, lease, or rent any vehicle. If she was driving that car, who gave her the keys? And why was a 50-year-old nurse who hated the woods buying a mountain campground pass and $30 of sandwiches? That was the last confirmed sighting of Judy Smith. On September 28, 1997, 3 weeks after the hunters found the remains near Chestnut Creek, the forensic results came back from the medical examiner's office. Using her dental records and the severe osteoarthritis in her left knee, the bones were officially identified. It was Judy. But the autopsy didn't just provide a name, it provided a horror story. Judy Smith had been murdered. Her skeletal remains showed linear cutting marks on her left and right rib bones. When investigators examined the clothing found with her remains, they found her white brassiere clean, identical puncture holes and slash cuts that aligned perfectly with the marks on her ribs. Judy was stabbed in the chest and back multiple times, until the blade scraped her spine. Pathologists noted defensive cuts on her hand bones, which means she had fought her killer. The forensic analysis of the decomposition estimated her time of death to be between late April and early May. This meant Judy Smith had been alive, wandering, or someone had her somewhere in the North Carolina mountains, for nearly a month after she disappeared from Philadelphia. But the most baffling detail, the enigma that still keeps us awake at night, was what she was wearing. When Judy left the DoubleTree Hotel in Philadelphia, she was wearing a purple jogging suit, white sneakers, a dark coat, and a red leather backpack. But when her skeleton was pulled from the shallow grave in North Carolina, she was wearing thermal underwear, heavy denim blue jeans, a turquoise-colored top, and expensive leather hiking boots. None of these clothes belonged to Judy. Her family had never seen them. They weren't in her hotel luggage. The woman who hated the woods, who owned no hiking gear, had been dressed from head to toe in professional mountain hiking clothes. Somebody dressed her like a different person before she died, and we still don't know who. And near the grave, investigators found two freshly dug holes. In the first hole, someone had buried a blue and black vinyl backpack. But it wasn't Judy's red leather bag. Inside the blue bag was additional winter clothing, local maps, a bottle of generic Tylenol, and $80 in cash. In the second hole, wrapped tightly inside a men's shirt, was a pair of expensive Bowley sunglasses, valued at over $100, and another $87 in cash. Judy's expensive diamond wedding ring was still intact on her finger. Naturally, with nearly $170 in cash left untouched in the dirt, combined with the diamond ring, the authorities officially ruled out robbery as a motive. The killer didn't want her money. The killer wanted her red backpack, which was never found. And the killer had buried his own gear, the men's shirt, the expensive male sunglasses, the blue backpack, right next to her grave. When Buncombe County detectives took over the murder investigation, they had to address the elephant in the room. They had to look back at Jeffrey. But the mountain terrain ruled him out. Jeffrey was morbidly obese, weighing well over 300 pounds, and suffered from a severe knee injury. Pathologists stated it was physically impossible for a man in his condition to have dragged a body up that steep, rugged 4,000-foot incline in the dense forest. Jeffrey was cleared completely. He had spent every ounce of his energy and wealth looking for her. In 2005, 8 years after his wife's bones were found, Jeffrey Smith died of a heart attack. He was 59 years old. He died without ever knowing who killed his wife, or why she ended up on that mountain. With Jeffrey cleared, investigators searched for other monsters in the woods. 2 names came up in the local files. The first was Gary Michael Hilton, the notorious National Forest serial killer. In October 2007, Hilton murdered a couple in this exact forest, leaving one of his victims just a mile from where Judy's remains had been discovered a decade earlier. But detectives couldn't bridge the gap. Hilton's confirmed murder spree began in 2007, 10 years after Judy's death. Plus, Hilton's method of killing was blunt force trauma and decapitation, which doesn't align with the precise stab wounds that took Judy's life. No physical evidence ever connected Hilton to the scene or the mountain slope in 1997. The second was Lewis Kyle Wilson, a violent local 19-year-old in Asheville in 1997, who was later arrested for brutal abductions of women. But, like Hilton, no physical evidence or DNA ever connected him to Judy. The true crime community has spent decades dissecting the clothing enigma. Some believe Judy suffered a sudden catastrophic neurological event in Philadelphia, perhaps a minor stroke, or a dissociative fugue state. They believe she forgot who she was, walked into the station, bought a ticket to the mountains, and bought new clothes and a gray sedan from someone. But how does a woman in a severe dissociative state manage to coordinate a 600-mile journey, hold coherent, pleasant conversations with a retail clerk, operate a manual or automatic gray sedan, and purchase a highly specific set of winter camping gear? That doesn't happen in a fugue state. Some also believe Judy never left Philadelphia alive. that she was murdered in the city, and that the woman seen in Asheville buying sandwiches and driving the gray sedan was a look-alike. A coincidence of mistaken identity, or a decoy meant to throw police off the trail. But this theory collapses under the weight of the physical evidence. The remains found on the mountain were positively identified as Judy Smith. Her actual unique dental records, her actual arthritic left knee, and her actual diamond wedding ring were found on that steep slope. For the decoy theory to be true, the killer would have had to murder her in Philadelphia, transport her skeletal remains 600 miles, and plant them on a mountain alongside a decoy's belongings. It doesn't hold up. Which brings us to the most disturbing psychological theory, the double life. Some believe Judy's forgotten driver's license at Logan Airport wasn't an accident. It was a calculated delay tactic. They believe she used the pharmaceutical conference as a cover to travel south to North Carolina, to meet a secret companion. This explains the gray sedan, heavily cluttered with boxes and bags, as if she was packing her life away. It explains the $30 of sandwiches, food for two, and it explains the physical evidence buried at her grave, the men's shirt, the expensive male sunglass, and the blue winter gear. In this scenario, the secret meeting in the mountains went horribly, violently wrong. Her companion betrayed her, stabbed her to death under the canopy of the Pisgah forest, wrapped her in a blue blanket, and buried her in the mountain dirt. However, we do not know if that's true. The case of Judy Smith has never been solved. The Buncombe County Sheriff's Office still lists it as an open homicide investigation. If this story is sitting with you, hit like and subscribe. It's what keeps true crime lore going, and keeps victims like Judy from being forgotten in the dark. Tell us your theories in the comments. We want to know what you think really happened to Judy Smith. And if you have any information about the disappearance or death of Judy Smith, please contact the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. We'll see you in the next one. And remember, no case stays cold forever.